All right, solving equations. Um, this is something that a lot of people catch on to really quickly. We're gonna go through a lot of different examples in this video. Um, I'm gonna try to go slow, uh, maybe quicker at first, but then we'll get to some complicated examples too. So you'll have plenty of time to practice this if it doesn't come immediately to you. Um, but we'll start with what does it mean to even solve an equation. If you remember the definition of variable, it was something that we don't know the value of, and these are often called unknowns. So to solve an equation means to kind of solve the unknown. You can think of it as a puzzle almost. So if we're solving, it means that we're finding what the variable has to equal, or what the unknown has to equal. We're figuring out the unknown. So go ahead and pause if you need some time to write that down. Otherwise, we'll move on. In order to find what the variable has to equal, in order to find what the unknown is, uh, there's a series of steps. And I'll go through the steps with you. You'll kind of see them in examples. But the most important thing to keep in mind is the golden rule of algebra, which is whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other. Okay, it's kind of like a balancing thing. So if you have a scale and you want to keep it balanced, then if you add weight to this side, you also have to add weight to this side in order to make it the same, in order to make it balanced. If I add a whole bunch of weight on this side, but I don't do anything over here, now all of a sudden it's unbalanced. So you can think of it that way. It's kind of an analogy that maybe you've seen before. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So we'll start with real simple one-step equations, and these may look familiar to you. This one says solve for r, and so what we have is the equation r minus 14 equals 23. Whenever you solve equations, there's kind of a way to organize your steps and organize your work so that you don't get lost, and so that your teacher can very easily tell what you're trying to do. So that if you make a mistake, it's really easy for us to see and help you with it. So one way to organize it that I think works really well is to start by drawing a line down the middle of the equals. Because then you can keep your left side and your right side separated. Then I'm trying to find what r equals. So eventually I'm going to have, at the end of all of my work, I'm going to have r equals and then some number over here. I'll fill in that box with some number eventually, but I can't do that yet. So that's what all these steps are for. So first if I want r to eventually end up by itself, I have to get rid of all the rest of this stuff. A good thing to keep in mind is opposite. So whenever I'm solving equations, I'm always thinking opposite. So the opposite of subtraction is addition. So if I want to get rid of minus 14, then I do plus 14. Okay? And those are opposites, so that'll get rid of this. But if you remember the golden rule, if I add 14 over here, then I have to add 14 over here. Okay? Since minus 14, subtract 14, and add 14 are opposites, those cancel each other out. Opposites cancel. So I'm left with just r on this side, and all of this is gone because it's canceled out. Over here then I have 23 plus 14. If I add those two together, I get 37. So in this case, my final answer is r equals 37. Okay? Over here, solve for n. I have 19 plus n equals 30. Start by drawing your line. I know that I eventually want to end up with n equals number. So I have to get rid of everything else that's in the way. So there's this 19 plus right here. Okay, so again, look up here, I'm thinking opposite. So I know that the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to, instead of having a plus 19 over here, I want to get rid of that, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is minus 19. And if I do minus 19 over here, then I have to do minus 19 on the right side. That gets rid of these, but I still have n. So I have n equals 30 minus 19, which is 11. So final answer, n equals 11. This one looks a lot trickier because it looks like it has a fraction in it, and fractions always freak people out. But I promise you that this is fine. You can do this. And all you're going to do is think opposite again. Okay. One way to read this is 6 equals x over 8. Another way that I think is maybe makes this more obvious is 6 equals x divided by 8. Because then if I'm thinking opposite, I know that the opposite of division is multiplication. So what I'm going to do on each side is multiply by 8. So times 8 times 8. Because I'm trying to get rid of divide by 8. I'm trying to get rid of this over 8 part. So the opposite of divide by 8 is times 8. So that cancels out the divide by 8 and the times 8, and all I have left is x. 6 times 8 is 48. And there's my final answer. Okay, so that's one-step equations. Here's two-step. And it's not a whole lot more difficult. It's just that now you're doing two different things before you have the answer. There are two things that you're going to need to do here. You're going to need to get rid of the minus 4 and the 7 times e. Okay. You have to do addition or subtraction first before you divide. It'll just make things easier. So if we are ordering these steps, first you want to add or subtract, and second you want to multiply or divide. Okay? So if you want to put that little side note over there to help you, then feel free. So what I have here then is a minus 4. That means if I'm thinking opposite again, that I'll want to do the opposite of minus 4, which is plus 4. And I need to do that to both sides. So those cancel out, and I have 7e equals 35. Okay. Then I need to get rid of the 7. Right now this is 7 times e. So I'm thinking opposite. Opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to do divide by 7, divide by 7. Okay, that cancels out the 7's, and I have e equals 35 divided by 7 is 5. Okay, so e equals 5, and that is your final answer. Over here, solve for b. I've got a plus 7. I want to get rid of a plus 7, so opposite would be minus 7 and minus 7. I'm left with 11b. These are gone. 40 minus 7 is 33. Then I need to get rid of the times 11, so I divide. And that gives me b equals 33 divided by 11. Okay? Now you can leave that as a fraction, but this will simplify because 33 divided by 11 equals 3. Now this is just a side note. On Khan, if you put in 33 divided by 11, a lot of times it'll be okay with that. So you can type in this as your answer, or you can type in 3 as your answer, and it should be okay with either one of those. Solve for j. Opposite of plus 7 is minus 7. That leaves me with j divided by 2 equals 5. Opposite of divide by 2 would be times 2. And so the 2's cancel out, and I just have j equals 5 times 2 is 10. Okay? Moving on. Sometimes you'll have variables on both sides of the equals. If you have that, then that's the first thing that you're going to want to get rid of. Okay? I can't, because these are on different sides, I can't do combine like terms and just say, oh, that's 14, because they're on different sides. But what I can do is subtract or add variables on one side or the other. So typically I want to avoid getting a negative variable. So here you got two options here. You can either try and cancel out this one, or you can try and cancel out this one. If I cancel out the 10x, I'd be subtracting 10x from both sides. And that's fine. I haven't done anything wrong. Except that 4 minus 10 is negative 6. And you can do that, but it's more difficult. So what I would recommend doing is avoiding that negative as much as you can. So if we do minus 4x instead, then that gets rid of these, and I just have negative 9 equals 10x minus 4x is 6x. And I'm just going to copy down this plus 3. I just drag that down. Okay. Then I need to, now it's basically a two-step equation. If you want to rewrite it and move this stuff over to the other side so it's like this, you can do that if that looks better to you. Then it's a two-step equation, so I need to get rid of the 3, so I minus 3 from both sides. And I have 6x equals negative 12. Then I divide by 6 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. And you're done. That's all you need. Next example, 8x minus 5 equals 5x plus 4. I have two options again. If I do minus 8 from both sides, then I'm going negative, because 5 minus 8 is a negative 3. So I'm going to do a minus 5x and a minus 5x. That leaves me with 8 minus 5 is 3x. Copy down the minus 5. No more x's over here, but I do have a 4. Alright, now it's a two-step equation. So I'm thinking opposite, so I add 5 to both sides to get rid of this. Then I have 3x equals 4 plus 5 is 9. And the last step is to divide by 3, divide by 3. Those cancel out, and I have x equals 9 divided by 3. On con again, you could probably type that in and be just fine. Or 9 divided by 3 is 3. And that would be fine also. Equations with parentheses. If you remember the last video, it was about distributive property. So that's the first thing that I need to do, is use distributive property to get rid of the parentheses. So that gives me 2t, 2 times t. Copy down a plus. 2 times 1 equals 10. Now it's the normal two-step equation, solving in equation steps. So this is 2t plus 2 equals 10. I subtract 2 from both sides. I get 2t equals 8. Then I divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and there's my final answer. Okay? Now you can do the same thing over here, or here's a shortcut. Here's a trick. If the number in front of parentheses is a factor of this number, then you can use a shortcut. Okay? So if this number over here is divisible by this number, then you can divide first instead of doing distributive property. So here's what I mean. You can do 6 divided by 2 very easily. 6 divided by 2 is just 3. So my first step, instead of doing distributive property, is I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Okay? That'll get rid of this, since technically this is 2 times all of this stuff. Okay? So I'm doing opposite. I'm dividing. That leaves me with 3 equals, these 2's are gone now, so this is just y plus 2. And at this point the parentheses really don't matter. So you can take those and just get rid of them. And now it's a really simple one-step equation. So this is a good shortcut if you can use it. Here I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I get 1 equals y. And that's my final answer. Alright, now here's the challenge problem. We're going to put everything all together. It's got parentheses, it's got variables on both sides, it's got some decimals. So this is really going to put together all of the different steps we've just talked about. The first one I'm going to do is distributive property. You always want to do that first if you have to. So 3 times 2.7 is 8.1. Copy down a plus. 3 times 5p, that's 15p. Then just go ahead and copy down everything else in the equation. Alright. Next I've got some like terms. So that becomes 18p plus 8.1 equals 6.1 plus 19p. Now I have two options. I can either do minus 18p on both sides, or I can do minus 19p on both sides. If I do minus 19, that'll leave me with a negative here. And I, again, don't really want that. So I'm going to do minus 18 on both sides. That gets rid of these, and I just have 8.1 equals 6.1 plus 1p. Then the last step is to subtract 6.1 from both sides. And that leaves you with 2 equals, these are gone, 2 equals 1p, or that's the same as p equals 2, and that's your final answer. Okay? So I know I went through a lot of examples there. I know especially this last one had a lot going on. These are steps that will become more familiar to you. It's just a matter of practice. Okay? So we've set up a lot of different ways for you to practice. And as always, if you're a little overwhelmed and need some help, just let us know.